Welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Emily. And today, we're talking about something a lot of people struggle with but don't always say out loud: how to learn English while working a full-time job.
Right. Because let's be honest, working 8, 9, even 10 hours a day, dealing with family, commuting, bills, stress, and then saying, "Now I'll study English." That's tough.
And not just tough, it can feel almost impossible. But the good news is, even with a busy life, there are ways to keep improving your English consistently. The secret isn't perfection. It's strategy. And compassion.
Exactly. And we're going to break this down today. Not with unrealistic advice like, wake up at 4 a.m. and study for 2 hours. No. We want to talk about real life. Small changes that actually fit into your routine.
Let's start with mindset. First of all, if you're working full-time and still making time, even 10 minutes, to think about your English, you deserve credit. A lot of credit.
Yes. So many learners feel guilty. I'm not doing enough. I should study more. But you're already doing so much. Working full-time is no joke. Learning on top of that takes serious resilience.
And that's why your learning plan should be built around your reality, not some perfect fantasy. If you can only do 5 minutes a day on your lunch break, that counts.
In fact, let's talk about micro-learning. Tiny moments of English that you can sprinkle into your day. On the train, while washing dishes, right before bed. These moments add up.
They really do. For example, instead of trying to read an entire book, maybe you read 1 paragraph a day. Or instead of watching a full movie, you watch a 5-minute clip with subtitles.
Or maybe you follow English-speaking creators on social media and listen to their posts while you're waiting in line. That's exposure. That's practice. And it doesn't take extra time.
Another tip. Make English part of your existing habits. If you drink coffee every morning, listen to an English podcast while you do it. If you check your phone before bed, change your phone language to English.
Yeah, exactly. You're not adding a new task, you're just switching the language of something you already do. That's low effort, but high impact. Also, don't underestimate passive learning. If your brain is hearing English every day, even in the background, it's adjusting. It's learning the rhythm, the tone, the flow of the language. And if you want to take things a step further, think about your goals. What kind of English do you really need for your life or your work? Focus on that instead of trying to learn everything at once.
Yes. If you work in customer service, focus on phrases for polite conversation. If you're in IT, learn the technical terms in English. Make it relevant, and it'll be easier to stay motivated.
And here's another thing, give yourself permission to be tired. It's okay if some days you don't have the energy. That doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human.
100%. Progress doesn't come from pushing yourself to the edge. It comes from returning to your goal, again and again, in ways that are kind and realistic.
Think of your English journey like a plant. You don't need to flood it every day. You just need to keep watering it regularly, even if it's just a little. That consistency matters more than intensity.
Another thing I want to mention is, don't wait for motivation. Wait for motivation, and you might be waiting forever. What works better is creating small routines, even tiny ones, that happen automatically.
Yes, like brushing your teeth. You don't always feel excited to brush your teeth, right? But you do it because it's part of your day. If you can make English part of a routine, even if it's 5 minutes, it becomes natural.
And 5 minutes today is better than 0 minutes waiting for the perfect time to study. Progress isn't about big dramatic steps, it's about gentle consistency.
And I think there's something powerful in that. Because the people who learn English while working full-time, they are not just learning words. They are building endurance. They are proving to themselves they can do hard things.
That's such a good point. Learning in these conditions isn't a weakness, it's a sign of strength. You're not behind, you're moving forward under pressure. That's something to be proud of.
And it's okay if that progress is slow. Language learning isn't a race. It's more like a road trip. And if you're driving a long road while managing other responsibilities, every kilometer still counts.
You know, I've spoken to learners who said, I only studied 10 minutes today, and they said it with disappointment. But in reality, that's 10 minutes of effort that wasn't easy. That's commitment.
Exactly. We tend to undervalue what we did do and focus on what we didn't. But when you're juggling a full-time job, every bit of effort is meaningful. You showing up? That matters.
And if you're listening to this right now, maybe while working, or commuting, or cleaning up after dinner, please know that this time counts. This is part of your English journey.
It really does. Listening, reflecting, even thinking silently in English, that's all valid learning. And when you add those small wins together, they build real progress over time.
And let's not forget, your mental and physical energy is limited. So it's okay to prioritize rest when you need it. Rest doesn't mean failure. Sometimes rest is what keeps you in the game long term.
Yes. Burnout won't help you learn faster. But kindness will. And flexibility will. And building learning into your life, not forcing it on top of everything else, is how you make it sustainable.
There's a lot of power in learning gently. Quietly. Slowly. Because you're not just studying English, you're living a full life and still choosing to grow. That's something remarkable.
So if you're doing what you can, even if it's small, you're doing enough. And if you're doing it consistently, you're doing great.
Absolutely. And just because your learning doesn't look like someone else's, doesn't mean it's not working. You're building your own path, one that fits your life, your needs, your strengths.
And in the end, that path is the one you're most likely to stay on. Because it's real. It's yours. And it's working.
Something else that helps is celebrating your small wins. So many learners wait until they are fluent before they feel proud. But what about understanding one difficult sentence today? Or remembering one new word? That's worth celebrating.
Yes. If you listened to an English voicemail and understood half of it, that's a win. If you wrote an email in English without using a translator, that's a big deal. Those everyday victories add up.
And when you notice those wins, it actually helps your brain feel more motivated. It tells your mind, hey, this is working. That creates a positive loop instead of guilt or frustration.
And we've said this before on the podcast, but I'll say it again now, fluency doesn't mean perfection. It means ease. It means confidence in real life, even if your grammar isn't perfect.
Exactly. And if your goal is to feel comfortable speaking English at work, or understanding your colleagues, then practice speaking, practice listening, and don't get lost trying to memorize every grammar rule.
And use what you already know. You don't need fancy vocabulary to communicate well. Clear, simple language, spoken with confidence, is powerful.
Yes. You're allowed to speak simply. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to ask someone to repeat. That doesn't make you less smart, it makes you a real communicator.
And if you're tired after work and don't want to sit down and study, maybe try switching how you learn. Passive input, like watching a show or listening to music in English, can still train your ears and mind.
And you can be creative. Maybe you journal in English for 2 minutes before bed. Or leave yourself a voice note in English in the morning. These tiny, private practices build fluency too.
And it's worth saying, not everything you do has to be productive. If you enjoy reading an English comic, or laughing at memes, or singing along to music, that's still valuable exposure.
Yes. Sometimes, when you're working full-time, the best thing is to find joy in English, not pressure. Make it something you look forward to, not something you dread.
That shift in attitude, seeing English as something that fits into your life instead of something you're behind on, that can change everything.
Because the truth is, you're not behind. You're building something. Quietly. Steadily. On your own terms. And that's the kind of growth that really lasts.
And let's talk about the guilt a lot of learners feel. I've heard so many people say, I didn't study this week, I've failed. But working a full-time job is already a massive commitment. The fact that you even care about your English, that says so much.
It really does. If you're showing up tired, but still squeezing in a podcast like this one, or still thinking in English even just a little, you're not failing. You're trying, and that effort is real.
And you know, guilt doesn't help us study better. It just makes learning feel heavier. But when you treat yourself with compassion, you actually create space to keep going.
Yes. You can't force your brain to learn when you're exhausted or burnt out. But you can invite it, gently, with kindness. You can say, let's try it just 5 minutes today, and that's enough.
And I always say, don't compare your learning journey to someone who has more time or fewer responsibilities. Comparing your pace to someone else's won't make you go faster, it'll just make you feel stuck.
And no two learners have the same life circumstances. If you're working full-time, maybe raising a family too, maybe dealing with health issues, then your learning is layered with so much effort. And that effort deserves respect.
I love that. Because it's not just about learning English, it's about building resilience. You're not taking the easy path. You're carving out your own path, with the time and energy you have.
And sometimes, learning in this way actually builds deeper language habits. Because you're learning in the real world. You're applying English to your life, not just to textbooks.
Exactly. When you respond to a work email in English, or listen to a podcast while doing the dishes, that's not less than a classroom. That's living the language.
And that counts. That's real learning. That's learning woven into your day, into your identity. That's something no exam can fully measure.
So, to anyone listening who's juggling full-time work and English, you're not behind. You're not failing. You're finding your rhythm, and that's where the magic happens.
And it's okay if that rhythm looks different from what you expected. It's okay if it changes from week to week. What matters is that you're still here, still moving, still trying in your own way.
So wherever you are right now, on your way to work, making dinner, resting after a long day, we just want to say, we see your effort. Learning English while working full-time isn't easy, but you're doing it.
You're showing up in your own way, and that deserves kindness, not pressure. Don't forget, progress doesn't have to be loud to be real. It can be quiet, consistent, and deeply meaningful.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If this episode helped you feel a bit more understood, or a bit more hopeful, we'd love if you shared it with someone who needs it too.
And remember, your English journey is yours. It doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be yours. Take care, keep going, and we'll talk to you soon.
This is the British Accent Podcast. Until next time.